he memorized. He knew that, and they knew that very, very well. So Jesus could speak, and when he spoke of certain things, he could use a term or a phrase, and it would trigger more than just, he said, pure in heart, pure in heart or poor in spirit, as we'll get to. It triggers more than just he just said that statement. It's like it's a loaded statement, if you will. He says it. It's like there's a lot of things tied to that in the Hebrew scripture that the people there would know. And they would think, oh, he said poor in spirit. Well, that ties to the scripture, as we'll see. So keep that in mind as we're reading, that it's not just a statement he made. There's a lot of things that are tied to it. And he uses, as he goes through these allusions, now you have it right, it's allusions. He's going through and he's saying, blessed are the poor in spirit, blessed are the meek. Now this is another thing we need to kind of make sure we have clear. Blessed are the poor in spirit. And we've heard these statements before. We've heard, blessed are the meek, blessed are the merciful, they will obtain mercy. But what does blessed are? What does that mean? Some translations say happy. Happy is the person. And to an extent, if you look at the language, it can be happy. That's fine. But it's way more than that. It's fascinating if you look at rabbinic literature, again, going to a context, these Jewish writings, that a rabbi, a teacher, would say to his disciples, if they illustrated or demonstrated something right, something that was right in God's eyes, they interpreted a teaching correctly or they did something right, they'd say, blessed are you, Simon, whatever, this person, because you are blessed by God because you have done the right thing or interpreted it correctly. So what it's saying is divine favor. Blessed are the meek. That's an attitude or an action or something that God has given divine favor or divine approval of. Does that make sense? Did I lose anybody on that? He says, blessed are the poor in spirit. He's talking about, he's giving a divine approval. This is something that God desires. This is something God cares about. God is saying, this is what I want. This is my desire for my people. So as we see, blessed are. In fact, we see it. It's funny because we have it in also Matthew 16. This is the only place where it says, blessed are, and some of Jesus talking. Matthew 16, verse 17. When the disciples are with Jesus in Caesarea Philippi, he asks the question, who do men say that I am? After asking, what other people say. He says, who do men say that I am? And what does Peter say? They all kind of say different things. What does Peter say? Christ. You are the Christ. You're God's Christ. Right. And then what does Jesus say? There you go. Bar Jonah, right. It's good. It's powerful because you see, that's exactly the same thing. He's saying, you got it right. That's what I'm talking about. You got the right interpretation, the right understanding, the right action. And that's something that God himself is saying. Jesus is saying, blessed are you, you have the right understanding of what was said and what the truth of the matter. So as we go through this, everything he's saying is not just you're happy, but it's you're getting it right. So just keep that in mind as we go. Now, as I said, we don't have time to go through everything. In fact, I'm going to cut out a lot of it. But we're going to go through a few of these. Let's just read Matthew 5, chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. And just read this, and we'll just highlight a couple of them. So, chapter 5, verses 1 through 13. In the TNI. Now, when Jesus saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them. And he said, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. God, may you just give us understanding in this time as we read your word, as we attempt to understand it. We open our hearts and our minds. God, speak to us. Give us clarity. May you speak to me and help us to apply what you've said to be your disciples. In Jesus' name. Amen. Let's begin right off with the poor in spirit. Verse number 3. Jesus sits down. We got all that. Us as being the disciples, we're sitting there. And Jesus is teaching. What does it mean to be disciple? Be his disciple. Be his follower. And what does he say? Number 1. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. So the question, it begs the question, I think. What does it mean to be poor in spirit? So does anybody have an answer to that question? Because I'd love to hear. Go ahead, Ange.
I have a different version,
Okay.
but I really like how they worded it. God blesses those who realize their need for the kingdom of heaven is good.
Good.
Read that and think I've deleted. I don't know if I have it straight here. On my own power, I should have.
Kind of dependence, maybe like a dependence upon God.
Beggars in God's soup kitchen. What one guy said.
Beggars in God's soup kitchen.
I like the idea of being a beggar in God's soup kitchen because who goes there? I mean, I was in campus ministry in Tucson, and one of the things we did on a regular basis was go and work at the soup kitchen and serve food to the beggars. People showed up, and to be that person is a bit of a stretch, unless, you know.
Well, it's funny, it's fascinating. The question, I guess, after this one I mentioned, it doesn't really mean economic poverty, because I think sometimes if you read this, if you look in Luke, the parallel of the Gospel of Luke, the question I have is to read it, in Luke's version it says, blessed are the poor, blessed are you poor, that's it doesn't have the in spirit on there. But in the Gospel of Matthew it says poor in spirit, so there's this idea of economic, financial poverty, but I think it's more than that. As we already said, Ange's version I think gets it really good at that point, that it's our need. Was it our need for, what was it, Ange? It's for our need for.
What was your version?
Yeah, what was your version, Ange?
God blesses those who realize their need.
He doesn't realize the need for him. Yeah. Again, this is an allusion. We're going to go right into it. An allusion in Hebrew Scripture. He's pointing back to something. If you look at Isaiah 61, verse 1, for example. Isaiah 61, verse 1. This is the passage in Luke. Isaiah 61, verse 1 and following, actually, of Jesus when he's in the synagogue in Nazareth. This is his home synagogue, I guess. And he reads a section, he basically talks about who he really is. And we'll just read the first verse. Again, Isaiah 61, verse 1. You guys, this may sound familiar to some, but the beginning says, the Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. So I think there's this element, some scholars find that is pointing to this idea of poor there, that Jesus' purpose is to come and share the good news with the poor. So blessed are the poor. But another possibility, another allusion is in Isaiah 66, verse 2. In Isaiah 66, verse 2, and starting halfway through this, it says, these are the ones I look on with favor, those who are humble and contrite in spirit, and who tremble at my word. So we get a little bit deeper, this idea of poor in spirit. If you look at the languages, and if Jesus is referring back to the Hebrew Scripture, this idea is humble. Poor in spirit or humble, contrite in spirit. What does he say? Those that tremble at my word. They know their need. They're dependent upon me. Trembling in my word is not just an attitude. It's actually they desire to do what God says. They desire to do what God says. Trembling in his word, humbling themselves. Humble and contrite in spirit. And in Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 3, another possible allusion that Jesus is pointing back to the Hebrew Scripture. It says, seek the Lord, all you humble of the land, you who do what he commands. Seek righteousness, seek humility. And this word, again, is the same word. Humility, poor in spirit, this concept. It's moving beyond, I think, that the idea of poverty. If we think of poverty, it's very good, but we have to think it's beyond that even. Those that are broken down, that realize their need for God, that are not only knowing it, but actually who do what he commands and they seek it out, seek out humility. Something that we do, not something that we necessarily are.